Someone pray. Do you know what it means to have a revolution? And what it takes to make a solution? Fighting against the pressure. Ooh, yeah. Battering down the pressure. Oh, yeah. Whoa. Ready to stand up and fight the right revolution? Are you ready to stand up and fight it just like soldiers? Mary, me, I called you, I told her. Baby, me, I called you, I told her. Stress. There is no free confidential support services to post secondary students in Ontario. Text 686868 anytime to connect with a trained volunteer crisis responder. Free, confidential, and 24/7. Text 686868 anytime because it's good to talk.
For the scandalous people of political scams in the Caribbean. Never rise. Some probably legality, constitutionally, this to expose the hypocrisy. If you examine the state of affairs in their land, you will find human rights violations, human disregard for the constitution, complex political persecution, of sanction violence, wickedness in legislative, criminal, and white domestic gangs. Just like the man who won, stand up together. Stand up against religion. There ain't nobody coming and dictate your course of action. All of them love your revolution. A political bandits just like here in India, my land. Right. Protect what you have. Protect what you have. The single inch, no retreat, not even a pinch. Don't compromise your revolution. For those scandalous speeches of political stamps in the Caribbean. No way, never rise. God bless you, Grenada. May your freedom be blessed with longevity and prosperous your economy. May we grant your leaders wisdom, endurance, and courage to grow. Any other problems to be confronted, that against corruption be and that rule away to that early down, be an example to tyrants in the land. Stand up together. Stand up against religion. Don't let nobody come in and dictate the course of action. All of them want vote your revolution. A political bandits just like here in the own island. Fight for your rights. Protect what you have. Fight a good life. Protect what you have.
Yes, when I'm on, my thing is to say mute or unmute.
You can leave
that mute because mute means you them can't hear you. So
right. Okay. Because when I started to speak to you,
never rise. Now we prove we stand, we put up a fight, and we show that we are right. On the king of March, history was made, and we go from now, we never break. We are always strong, we are free and brave, and we will fight to even to the grave. Long live people's revolution. Long live people's revolution. Struggle, struggle for right. Struggle, struggle for freedom. Struggle, we will not give freedom. Let justice and equality prevail. 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 Stand firm. Stand firm. Patriots, stand firm. I love my country and so do you. Stand firm. Don't let no mercenaries stand firm for freedom and justice. Stand firm for righteousness. Stand firm for liberation. Stand firm for your nation. Stand firm. Patriots, stand firm. Stand firm. Patriots, stand firm. I love my country and so do you. Stand firm. Don't let the mercenaries stand firm for dignity. Stand firm for equal opportunity. Stand firm for Caribbean unity, yeah. One race, one destiny. Stand firm. Patriots, stand firm. Stand firm. Patriots, stand firm. I love my country and so do you. Stand firm. Don't let the mercenaries stand firm. Patriots, stand firm. Stand firm. Patriots, stand firm. I love my country and so do you. Stand firm. Let no mercenaries stand firm for freedom and justice. for righteousness. Stand firm for liberation. I say the rascal against depression. Stand firm. Yes, we must stand firm. Stand firm. Yes, we must stand firm. I love my country and so do you. Stand firm. Don't let the mercenaries rule.
Revolution, revolution, they cry. Everybody fighting, don't know who will die. Tuesday, March 1979. In a day, every West Indian will bear in mind. People driven with their backs to the wall, responded in answer to them as God. Full and vision, spontaneous was the cry. No one was afraid and denied. The people call it, old people say, young people say, I say, the Rastaman say, the NJM say, the RA say, for justice, equality, equal opportunity, evermore we can say. Soldiers of justice are ready to fight for school and efficiency all through the night. And thousands of homes sleeping deep in their bed. Freedom fighters render their blood to be shed. The grace of the masses, the cry of the poor, the guns of the dumb mercies of the credo. From the simple mill when a God leaders fall, but soon that victories are won. The people call it, old people say, young people say, Rastaman say, NJM say, ERA say, EPH. For justice, equality, equal opportunity, evermore we can say. Liberation, liberation at last. Long live the struggles of the working class. The patriotism and dedication. We rise every day to meet the morning sun. Forward never, backward never is a crime. We can be free now, the pain of paradise. This struggle is long, and we will be the pain, but we live and work. The people call it, old people say, young people say, I say, the Rastaman say, the PRA say, the NJM say, the United say, for justice, equality, equal opportunity, forever more and say.
Watch out, Jesus, St. Kitts and William, St. Vincent, St. Lucia, and Dominica. Another pillar crumble, down comes the prison wall. Another leader tumble, and another tyrant fall. Coming up, a brand new evolution. Coming through the West End. Coming up, a brand new revolution. Colonialism dying by the breeze. Hello. MC communism putting on the squeeze. Hello. Young people shouting socialism with ease. Hello. Young people shouting socialism with ease. Hello. music, there's a message. This advantage shall soon be solved. Listening to the new song, spreading all around. What was lost is now found. Your vessel shall be from. So now, a brand new revolution coming through the West Indies. Now, a brand new revolution. Racialism dying by degrees. We say communism, putting on the street. Let people shouting socialism. Let people shouting socialism. We must protect them. It's the education system. Revolutionize the young mind. The years of peace and life. West Indians, it's a new dawn. And the forward march is on. Revolution. Coming through the West Indies.
Oh, Grenada, land of force, we pledge ourselves to thee. Heads, hearts, and hands in unity to reach our destiny. Ever conscious of God, being proud of our heritage, may we with faith and courage aspire, build, advance as one people, one family. God bless our nation.
Rupert march to Humphrey House, forward march. And march against oppression, forward march. Now grenade and occupation, end of misery and oppression. So we fill Grenada full with our song. Forward march, forward march, forward march. On commemoration, forward march. We all fight for liberation, forward march. Now grenade end of misery and oppression. So we fill Grenada full with our song. Forward march, forward march, forward march. Forward march, forward march, colonialism, forward march. We will fight imperialism, forward march. Now grenade and occupation, end of misery and oppression. So we fill Grenada full with our song. March, forward march against imperialism. Forward march, imperialism. We the workers fight for justice, forward march. In this struggle we are united, forward march. For now the end corruption and oppression, and we give Grenada with the very hand. Forward march,
declaration.
Brothers and sisters, welcome. I'm Paul Clement, Professor of Economics at the State University of New York. May I start by saying thank you for taking the time to be with us here today to celebrate the 44th anniversary of the Grenada Revolution, and on this day, March 11th, 2023, the 50th anniversary of the formation of the New Jewel Movement. This event is entitled The Grenada Revolution, Impact on the Caribbean, Relevance to and Lessons at 50 and Beyond. It is dedicated to all those who contributed to the making and the building of the Grenada Revolution. We will have more information a little later, but I would like to mention the plight of Comrade Glenn St. Louis, a staunch NJM supporter and a supporter of the Grenada Revolution, who recently lost his home to fire. This event is brought to you by the Grenada Revolution Memorial Foundation and the Grenada Revolution Celebrations Committee. Thanks to everyone who contributed to this event, especially Mr. John Calise of GEM FM Radio and Genesis Magazine. This evening, we will have 3 presentations with a number of cultural items included. Our speakers are Dr. Tessa Barry, Ms. Valerie Gordon, and Professor Brian Meeks. Each speaker will have 20 minutes for the presentation. Please feel free to post your questions and comments in the chat during the presentations. At the end of the presentations, we'll have an interactive session where you can comment and ask questions, and we'll also address the questions in the chat. Throughout the presentations today, you will hear about the main contributions and lessons of the Grenada Revolution in the areas of economic policy, social policy, domestic policy, and foreign policy. So I'd like to now just introduce our first speaker, Dr. Tessa Barry. Dr. Tessa Barry holds a PhD in agricultural extension and a bachelor's degree in management studies from the University of the West Indies. She also holds a master's degree in economics and management of rural development from the University of Manchester, England. Dr. Barry worked at the Department of Agricultural Economics and Extension, University of the West Indies, Trinidad and Tobago. Her research includes agricultural extension, gender and food security, agricultural entrepreneurship, disaster mitigation, and rural advisory services. Dr. Barry is currently researching the PRG's policy in agriculture and agro-industries. She is passionate about rural development and women's empowerment through agricultural development. Please welcome Dr. Tessa Barry.
Thank you very much. If you'll allow me just to share my screen. One second. Right, so can you all see my screen?
Yes.
Right, lovely. So good afternoon, everyone. As my name is Tessa Barry, as was introduced, and I would like to say thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak on the theme this afternoon, on the Grenada Revolution impact on Caribbean civilization, relevance to and lessons for Grenada at 50. Just to give you a little bit on my focus for this evening, I'll give you a brief background on the research because I would like to take this discussion from the perspective of the research that I'm currently involved in. I would highlight some achievements in agriculture during the period 1979 to 1983. Now, I am highlighting these achievements and then narrow down on how these achievements was supported to be able to have that success of agriculture during that particular period. And then I'll end with what are some of the lessons that we are taking forward towards 50. So to begin, but this research, now the topic of this research is forward ever, backward never, documenting and revitalizing revolutionary agriculture and sustainable food systems in Grenada. Now, you might ask why this research. A couple years ago, I was invited to that very said panel and participated in listening on the discussion that took place surrounding the Grenada Revolution. So I after that panel, I reached out to my supervisor, my former supervisor from my PhD studies, and we decided to put together a research proposal. And given my love for both history and agriculture, we wrote to the funders, Arts and Humanities Research Council, that's in the UK, through the University of Liverpool, where my supervisor currently works. And that research is, the two principal investigators are myself and my supervisor, and that's Dr. Levi Gaiman. The deliverables from that research is that we would be creating a virtual library, and that virtual library would include things like videos, interview clips, research paper, etc., and other documents relative to agriculture during the revolutionary period. It would also entail 3 major workshops that we're looking to conduct, one with women, one with youth, and specifically women and youth because they were particularly targeted during that period for empowerment, and a general workshop which would be inclusive of farmers, suppliers, etc. And the project is expected to culminate with a National Agricultural Expo. All of these are under the fund from the Arts and Humanities Research Council. So that's just to give you a little bit of background on the research. Now I'm going to start off with a quote from Comrade Louison, who was the then agricultural minister. Excuse me if you're hearing a little bit of noise. I'm right next to a mechanic shop. So a quote from the Comrade Louison, again, he was the then agricultural minister, and he stated that the revolution was clear that we had to give agriculture a new role in order to create wealth, to bring a higher standard of life for our workers, farmers, and people of our country. Agriculture, therefore, had to supply food for the people, be a major foreign exchange earner, provide raw material for agro-industrial development, develop self-reliance through full utilization of our land. And he operated under the motto that agriculture is the motor of our economy. Now, I'm going to highlight some achievements under these 4 thematic areas. And then I'll zero in on what was the structure like that supported and enabled the achievements under these areas. So for supply for the people, supply food for the people, we had some of the achievements included increasing the production of a lot of our local crops, so things like nutmegs, cocoa, our major plantation crops, as well as some of our cash crops like cabbages, eggplants, corn, etc. There were a number of agricultural projects that took place during that period, and a lot of them were running simultaneously. And some of these projects encourage increased production in crops as well as livestock production, as well as fisheries. And during that period, in terms of supplying food for the people, everyone, the entire nation was encouraged to feed themselves. And what I found very instrumental under that theme, there was the establishment of a state-owned restaurant known as Crucial Factor, which had the mandate of serving a variety of local dishes. So a lot of the things that were produced and a lot of the food that we consumed locally was served in that particular restaurant. It was named Crucial Factor. Under agro-industrial development, Kenrick Radick stated that in order to build agriculture, we must first start to produce the things, to process the things that we produce. And that's one of the great achievements during the period 1979 to 1983. And just to highlight some, we had the first agro-industrial factor plant that was opened, and it employed approximately 42 persons. We had a number of agro-industries that purchased from local farmers, and that's key, because if as well as the farmers were producing, market was needed. So hence the agro-industries was a suitable market opportunity to purchase from the local farmers. Agro-industry plants in areas such as nectars, jams, and jellies, etc. You had sugar factories, establishment of sugar factories, establishment of fisheries corporation, fish processing plant, and a coffee processing plant. And notice I have in the bracket there 50-50. In my discussion with Comrade Cole, he mentioned that the coffee processing plant operated on the 50-50 mandate, meaning 50% of the coffee should come from locally produced coffee. So from our local farmers, 50% of the coffee came from them and 50% was imported to produce the final coffee products. And these are just a few, given the time we have, of some of the achievements. And then we have self-reliance through full utilization of our land. And this was supported through, at that time, we had technology starting to be utilized with the first aerial survey to show actual use of lands, development of cooperatives to support the use of lands. And for example, we had the National Cooperative Development Agency, which supported the Idle Hands for Idle Lands initiative. And then you had Land Development and Utilization Commission. And that particular commission focused on larger parcels of land. Then you had major foreign exchange earner, agriculture as a major foreign exchange earner. And from there, the largest contributor during that time, we saw the contribution of agriculture to the GDP, from agriculture to the local GDP increasing by significant percentage during that particular period. You had the development of the Marketing and National Importing Board. You had increased export earnings from increased foreign markets that bring in a lot of foreign exchange. And then you had a lot of regional trade agreements where we were given the opportunity to export some of the nectars and juices, for example, to places like Dominica and Trinidad and Tobago. Now, these are just some of the achievements re the agricultural sector during that particular period. Now, you might ask yourself, why was agriculture so successful during that period? And this enabling environment was created through education, infrastructure, finance, policy, marketing, the establishment of cooperatives, and very key, mobilization through public awareness. So I'll just touch on them, on each of these briefly. Now, education, we had a number of training schools which were given priority. Now, the Mirabel Farm School was inherited from the period of Sir Eric Matthew Geary. However, during the revolutionary period, it was upgraded. And then there was that opportunity to partner with SGU for research to support the Mirabel Farm School. You also had a number of scholarship opportunities given in the field of agriculture. So we had a number of our citizens going off to study various subject matter within this sector, like agronomy, etc. And there was a heavy emphasis on research and design. I want to place an emphasis here on that, because a lot of the times we do not acknowledge the importance of data to drive development. And there was that heavy emphasis on research and design. Other training schools were established, like the Bulong Estate Training School, the Lassages Estate Training School, and the Bukash Estate Training School. Now, these training schools and these scholarship opportunities and what they were designed to support agriculture. They were designed to support agricultural development. So the sector had that support from an educational perspective. You also had policy. And one of the things Comrade Code said in a discussion with him is that everything starts with policy, and not just policy, however, but implementation of these policies. And two very instrumental policies that existed during that period was the Idle Lands for Idle Hands initiative, and we had zonal allocation of lands where special permission was needed to utilize arable lands for purposes other than agriculture. So we saw there the importance that was placed on agriculture and the need to utilize as much of these lands as possible. And I just want to pause here for a moment to read for you a short extract from a poem that was written by Ms. Denise Harvey from Caracou, where she said, "Mr. Idle Hand, go walk the land. Whole day you sit upon your bottom, a mopping, sponging idle man, with penny or twopence you sit, watching the workers fence, the land that give you bread, you calling dead. Mr. Idle Hand, the first thing that touched you was a hand. And when you dead, the last thing to stretch you is a hand. Mr. Idle Man, is your hand that dread? Not the land. Watch your hand, Mr. Man." And that is because at that time, the Idle Hands for Idle Lands, that policy was very much publicized. And a lot of young people were encouraged to find these lands, locate these lands, and collaborate to work these lands to ensure full production. Another key support structure was infrastructure. And then we had, through infrastructure, the development of the international airport, or the attempt to develop the international airport. And whilst we might think the international airport probably was developed in support of tourism, etc., for more persons to come, it was also the intent as an opportunity to assist in the export of our local produce. So not just by sea, but for more for perishable crops, etc., to have quicker reach to the markets, the external markets. The development of the Eastern Main Road project and the farm roads or feeder road projects. The farm roads and feeder roads especially developed to support farmers. So there you saw even the infrastructure. So education designed to support the sector, policies designed to support the sector, infrastructure designed to support the sector, and even financing. So you had the development and expansion of the National Commercial Bank, but through that, there was specifically designed loans to support farmers where the interest rate, etc., was developed in a way to meet the needs and to meet how they operated. And then you had the opening of sub-branches to serve the needs of rural communities. Unfortunately, what we see now is a sort of regression where a lot of these sub-branches that were open probably during that time are now closed. And so you have fewer and fewer branches of banks within the rural communities. But in that particular time, you had the opening of sub-branches to serve the needs of the rural community, making it easier for farmers to access, to do the financing and the financial business, etc. Also achieved under that time was the purchasing of the Royal Bank of Canada. Then you had marketing and cooperatives, and I mentioned earlier on the establishing of the NIB, or formerly the NIB, which is the National Importing Board, and Marketing and National Importing Board was extended or expanded from that. And that particular establishment they developed links with a number of countries to assist in the export of a lot of our crops, because there was increased production. You had the export of fresh vegetables, which rose by 27% in the period 1981. And what was something that was very surprising for me is that Grenada became a major exporter of eggplant. And now you hardly seeing eggplants around, and during that period, Grenada used to export a lot of eggplants. And then very instrumental as a supportive structure, you had the establishment of cooperatives in agriculture, in fisheries, credit union, bakeries, etc. So those were some of the structures that encouraged and supported and created an enabling environment for agriculture to develop and to reach its fullest potential. And not to leave out, very important was the mobilization through public awareness, what I refer to as sloganization. There was an entire public education. So all throughout Grenada, where you went, you would have seen things like billboards, big billboards, etc., saying cultivate our land, build the revolution, etc. And I think that was very instrumental, because as much as you creating an enabling environment, the idea of the buy-in factor and showing that the entire community or the entire nation bought in on the importance of agriculture was extremely important to the success of this sector. And so you had a national campaign, national mobilization through public awareness type of campaign. Now, what are some of the lessons I think that I believe we should pay particular attention to and to take forward to help build the sector from a Caribbean perspective, or to continue building this sector from a Caribbean and local perspective, is one, and that's just a few given in the interest of time, the creation of an enabling environment. That is the support structure. So a support structure that is designed to support the sector, from financing to education to infrastructure to mobilization to education and awareness, through cooperative, through community, and coming together of everyone. That public education and awareness campaign is something that is extremely needed, something that is critical, because we need to instill in our population the importance of eating local, the importance of purchasing local food, and that I think is an important lesson that we should take forward. The importance of cooperatives and a policy shift and the impact of policy shift. And for example, we would have had a policy shift away from agriculture into tourism. And I think one of the lessons that we should take is not so much a shift from one sector to the other in terms of, but an opportunity to be able to link sectors. So intersectoral linkages, for example, the tourism and the agricultural sector, much to gain from a concerted effort to link these two sectors. So those are just some of the lessons I think that going forward as a nation and 50, and as well as in terms of its importance to Caribbean development. These are some of the things I would say, or some of the lessons I would say that we should take away. And one that I do not have here, but that I would also like to highlight, is in the importance of community. And the importance, and community was something that was stressed a lot upon during that particular period. And so the importance of community and the support of community. There is something called community support agriculture, and that's something I think we can take away from that particular period. And on that note, I would like to say thank you for listening, and I would like to give credit to the individuals who we would have interviewed thus far during the research: Mr. Bernard Cord, Mr. Colville Hercules, Mr. David Clark, and Mr. Byron Campbell, and some of the authors who we would have engaged with their work on some aspects of agriculture during the revolutionary period. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you very much, Dr. Tessa Barry, for your excellent presentation, and for putting so eloquently the importance of self-sufficiency, not only in Grenada, and the lessons from the revolution in terms of self-sufficiency and what economists call developing an indigenous engine of growth, which is so crucial to getting out of this cycle of poverty within developing countries. Thank you very much. We'll now have a cultural item. John?
I'm not hearing.
John? Martin, John, can you hear me? Thank you very much, John. Our next speaker will be Ms. Valerie Gordon. At the age of 24 years old, Ms. Valerie Gordon, a teacher by profession, was the national coordinator of the Center for Popular Education, CPE, literacy program during the People's Revolutionary Government of Grenada. Her duties included coordinating the work of the CPE in all the parishes, fundraising for the National Technical Commission, planning, program design, developing methodology, and co-authoring the CPE books. Today, Ms. Gordon is an award-winning results-oriented project management professional with extensive experience and expertise in funding with international development finance donor agencies, including the United Nations Development Program. She is certified in asset-based community development approaches and techniques for community-driven social change as a global fellow in the Global Alumni Network operating across 60 countries. Please welcome Ms. Valerie Gordon.
Thank you, Paul. Mr. Chairman, members of the Grenada Revolution Memorial Foundation, comrades and friends. Every year at this time, we celebrate the anniversary of our revolution. And within that, education tends to feature. It features from the perspective of the stellar achievements in all its facets. Today, however, as we contemplate the theme of the Grenada Revolution's relevance to and lessons for Grenada at 50 and beyond, I am urged to examine what being 50 means in the average human life cycle. Shall I say simply that we have come of age? And coming of age tends to suggest taking responsibility for ourselves and who we truly are in a way that may not often happen before we get it. I want to invite you to join me in contemplating a slightly different angle, the angle of people's or human agency. What do I mean by that? As it relates specifically to this theme. Let's look at a definition, this one by Dr. Nikki Lisa Cole. Agency refers to the thoughts and actions taken by people that express their individual power. The core challenge at the center of the field of sociology is understanding the relationship between structure and agency. Structure refers to the complex and interconnected set of social forces, relationships, institutions, and elements of social structure. And here's the important part, that work together to shape the thought, behavior, experiences, choices, and overall life courses of people. In contrast, agency is the power people have to think for themselves and act in ways that shape their own experience and their own life trajectories. Agency can take individual or collective forms. For the purpose of this discussion, I focus more on the individual agency, although it is very difficult to separate the two, as I think that it is pivotal. It is the pivotal starting point for what I'd like to convey. So what is the connection between individual and collective forms of agency with today's theme? The answer lies, to my mind, in what the lesson of education by and of the revolution are for people's individual agency, first and foremost. I dare say that the revolution was exceptional among national development processes in the Caribbean region, and generally in small island developing states globally, in how it facilitated
Maxine is right here.
and enabled agency in both individual and collective forms. Note that this is in contrast with what occurred in the recent post-colonial era, where everything worked from top down. Only 5 years before, top even meant decided in colonial UK. My use of words here is significant. Gabor Mate put it brilliantly in his work on Return to Wholeness, and I quote, "We cannot give anyone agency or empower them as such. What we can do is help them wake up to the potential of agency within themselves." I repeat for emphasis, we cannot give anyone agency or empower them, as is commonly said and used. What we can do is help them wake up to the potential of agency within themselves. I subscribe to this notion. This is very important because if agency can be given to anyone, it can also be removed leaving them powerless. But if it lies within people as it truly does, their power is in their own hand. What the revolution did was to enable our people to awaken the power within themselves in many respects, primarily through education. And that's where the nexus lies. Really think about this. It is very important for people to understand both the meaning of agency and examples of how it manifests itself in real life. It is not abstract. To some, it may seem new, a new way of using the word agency, but to others, you may already know or take for granted. So let us first reflect on how the revolution facilitated individuals to wake up to their potential within themselves. First, it gave opportunities. The CPE program, the Teachers Education, National In-Service Training and Education Program, NISTEP, the campaign for equal pay for equal work, the maternity leave law. So women who hitherto were unemployed and limited to domestic roles could get up, use their own agency, and earn. With that, the sky became the limit to people in their life pursuits. The revolution invited another key element of agency, and a tip for us to continue to think about later when we start to look at the lessons. Each one teach one. Who remembers that saying and billboard? It invited. It inspired. By its very motto and guiding principle, let those who labor hold the reins. It challenged significantly. Up on our feet and not on our knees was a common saying to challenge us to get up into our agency and do what we have the potential and power to do. It practiced and led by example, a most powerful and effective way to show others what they can do. And that's not all. In the interest of time, I stop here, but I'm sure others of us who have experienced the revolution can come up with a myriad of other examples. It recognized efforts at nation building, ingenuity, creativity, discovery, invention, and service were nationally recognized, awarded, and celebrated. I use a common example of Cunha. Why? Because it's one of the outstanding examples of individual agency that we can all relate to. Cunha, as an old farmer, could probably hardly read and write and was from a rural area. And we know that in that period, it was about, it was when the common phrase, country people come to town. So Cunha would have felt like a countryman in that era, especially before the revolution. That was a dominant perception of people from the country or rural areas. But the revolution enabled him to wake up to the potential of agency within himself, that he could invent a beetle trap to solve the problem of beetle infestation of his cocoa crop. Then the revolution recognized and celebrated his efforts. Think also of the example that Cunha gave to others, as it did to so many of us who 44 years later still persevere, still succeed because of the seed planting then. Our waking up was enabled. The revolution emulated prize-giving ceremonies for the best adult literacy teachers who were required and encouraged to help to themselves have defined the criteria for selection to be awarded. Think about that in the context of the immediate post-colonial area. It was open to all who wanted to contribute positively. It encouraged. I don't know if you remember the poster, the billboard, Education is a right, not a privilege. In other words, you are entitled to take advantage of it. I'm sure you can think of others. Underlying and pivotal to all of this was education, mass education. And now, how did the revolution help our people to wake up the potential power or agency within themselves as a collective? How does one facilitate ordinary people in very large numbers to exercise their agency? This is what the National Conference of Delegates on Mass Organizations on the budget and the economy did. An example of the collective form of agency that facilitated all of the achievements of the revolution. It practiced, led by example again at the collective level, village, zonal, and parish councils engaged in decision-making. It promoted that economic reconstruction could take place through people's participation. The NGM's very own struggle to organize the people to get rid of Gary did in itself enable them to wake up to the potential of agency within themselves. And I take a moment to endorse our chairman's recognition of the 50th anniversary of the formation of the New Jewel movement, today, March 11th. This is how and why so much was achieved during such a short space of time, and not since repeated. Adult literacy, women's progress, youth advances, house repair, road and drain fixing, repair of all the 65 primary schools in the country, the building from scratch of several community centers by the people, the repair by farmers and communities of many miles of farm and feeder road, government providing equipment and supplies, the people organizing themselves to actually do the work and achieve the goals set by themselves. The construction of the airport, supported by a group of women who organized fundraising efforts, as little as that may have contributed financially relative to the overall cost. And the list goes on, all in 4.5 years. It helped arouse, yes, awakening people a sense of belief in their potential, a sense of capability for self-determination, even a sense of national pride and identity. It was the revolution's distinguishing competence. But there's also a historical context to the exercise of agency, social capital, visionary leadership, political organization, consciousness raising, another way of saying education. It is our history of revolutionary struggle of as a people. What is the common thread connecting the struggle of the Caribs, the early Africans, our ancestors, who were kidnapped, the slave revolts, Federal Revolution of 1795 to 96, the ex-servicemen's revolt of 1920, the 1951 revolution, the 1973 to 74 revolutionary uprising, and the March 1379 People's Revolution. From colonization, from colonial rule, semi-slave conditions, exploitation, oppression, from imperialism, from dictatorship, and authoritarian style rule. The common thread is people's innate inbuilt desire for freedom and independence, to exercise that agency even when it was not referred to in that way, even when it was suppressed and not encouraged. So what does all this mean for us today and going forward to 50? That revolutionary upsurges, even temporarily successful, can be defeated militarily and politically. But the revolutionary ideas of people, Grenadian people, Caribbean people, and the world, for that matter, can never be defeated despite setbacks. Look at how many times we've heard of mention of the revolution and its benefits in the past few years by people all over Grenada, especially in the last election, despite suppression of anything of that nature in the post-83 period. Those ideas, That innate desire to control our agency is the thread which connects all of our centuries of history. This is why the powerful global hegemonies, powers of different historical ages, sought to repress it, fearing the people's never-ending desire for an end to exploitation and oppression, of slavery, etc. And more recently, for an end to racism. So often they acted to remove people's agency. What is the essence of slavery if not agency removed? So coming forward to our current situation, as I come to a close, I ask the question, and I hope you will exercise your agency in attempting to answer it, to help me answer it. Is our education now, or for that matter, our system of governance in general, almost 50 years since independence, enabling or facilitating our people's agency as a primary objective? Not as something that happens by the way, but as a primary objective, like the revolution did. Agency underpins everything. If it is not doing that, why not? Then what is it enabling or facilitating? The revolution, what it did in 45 years ago, what would be the ideal way to enable agency now? I just use a quick example in the interest of time again. For example, is it preparing a child or adult to be confident in his or her own identity, or to pursue whatever his or her talent might be, even if that means pursuing non-traditional fields? Maybe arts. Is it teaching him to love him or herself no matter what? Be comfortable in his or own skin, whatever their gift or talent might be, to find a place in this globe where that talent could be valued, even if it's not valued at home. How does the system apply to this? How do we as parents, grandparents, apply this principle of value? Ideally, education should, if nothing else, prepare a child for life in the next 20 or more years to exercise his agency. How is our people's agency being manifested today? As individuals, as a collective? Are we seeing the evidence of it dominant as it was in the revolution? If not, why not? And what can be done about it? What therefore are the lessons for each of us? It must start with each of us. What can I do? Remember how the revolution did it: inspired, encouraged, promoted, guarded us and our agency, and showed by example to all of us and collectively. How can we, who have benefited from what the revolution has helped us awaken in ourselves, continue to use this? In fact, the anecdotal evidence suggests that persons who were involved in the revolution largely have since used their agency to advance careers, build businesses, pursue their own life paths. It is not enough to just distill the lessons. May the lessons, tools, and techniques of the revolution, especially the impact of its education, move each and every one of us who has had the privilege of its experience firsthand to use our individual agency for our own benefit. And let this 44th anniversary of the revolution and the 50th anniversary of the New Jewel movement awaken or reawaken in us the resolve to enable at least one other person in our family, in our community, or workplace, or church, in the region, or wherever else, to use theirs. What a tremendous awakening that would be as we look to the 50th year and beyond. I remain open, starting with me, to facilitating the startup of these conversations on this issue. Thank you. Long live the Grenada Revolution, and long live the awakening of our people to their own agency.
Thank you very much, Val. Thank you very much for your excellent presentation, and also for your contribution to education in Grenada, and your continued contribution. And And I have to say, I have to share with this forum, one of your favorite teachers from the Teachers Training College said, what an amazing student you were, and you continue to be today. Thank you very much.
Thank you. My regards to your dad.
Thank you very much. Thank you. So we'll go into now into a poem by Mr. Aquino Romain, All We Wanted Was Better. John?
Wanted better. But better ain't always easy. In fact, better is bittersweet. We know because we see it, we know because we feel it, we know because we live it, we know because we live in with the consequences of a bitter, sweet, better. Better began when the bitter reality of the plantation was too much to bear. Better began when a little black boy from Dunfermline appeared, prepared to challenge the colonial order, shift the paradigm and rid our paradise of colonial parasites. If it's riot they want, then it's riot they go get. He tell us, paint the whole sky red. He say no more suffering. We want adult suffrage. Working class champion. Working for better, not British. Who thought we would have witnessed better become bitter, bitter, bitter. Revered by one generation, feared by a next, be prepared nevertheless to seek redress for the distress caused at the hands of the dictator. Distress was the creator of a movement for improvement, be it constitutionally or forced removement, by any means necessary. All cards on the table, any option available, because things bitter. When it go get better, but things must bitter before it get better, better, better. And so, it was youth who were resolute in their pursuit of true betterment. Better meant improved infrastructure and healthcare, free education and welfare, self-help and self-care. Eat what you grow what you eat, less import and more industry, organization, grassroots representation, involvement of the masses, equality of classes, classes for the illiterate, empowerment for women, wealth for ourselves and our children's children. Better meant a battle for power. Like Fidel and Ernesto, we needed a revolution to manifest the manifesto. And on the morning of March 13th, 1979, a voice echoed throughout the
government of the criminal dictator, A.M. has been overthrown. The entire army has surrendered. All the arms have been captured. The government has been restored. All religious rights and freedoms are now restored. The people's rights to life and private property are hereby restored. The new revolutionary government calls on all the people to defend the revolution.
All we wanted was better, a better plan. For a better land now, the popular opinion is that things much better than under Gary's administration. Improved healthcare and education, plus a massive stimulation of the agricultural sector. Now we producing juices and nectars. Women empowerment, maternity leave. We bought a bank for $1 and set up the national insurance scheme. Plus we construct the airport in Point Salines. In terms of foreign policy, non-alignment was our policy. Uncle Sam can't police we. Bishop say we in nobody's backyard and that is it. But idealism and geopolitics is two things that really don't mix. So we seeing things one way and Uncle Sam seeing it the next. What we seen as betterment, he's seen as a threat. He can't afford a next Cuba in the region. Now all of a sudden, democracy in season. And watch how the seasons change. The atmosphere on our revolutionary island changed too. It's funny what a little destabilization does do. Revolution breeds counter-revolution. Now counter-revolutionaries counting the blessing. Party split, Morris say no to joint leadership and get house arrested. And now all the time, money, and energy invested in securing better, sliding slowly down the gutter. Things getting bitter, bitter, bitter. All we wanted was better. A better plan for a better land, but things too far gone. The damage has been done. Blood has been spilled and everything we built crumbling. It's like it come for nil. It's we who kill our revolution. Divided like factions, forming factions, but that was perfect ground for destabilization to take traction. Or maybe our experiment was bound to fail. Maybe our better was destined to be bitter because like Photoshop, we try to crop ourselves out the bigger picture, but things don't work so. High ambition, little resource, pit against Uncle Sam and his American force, regional heads in full support. I starting to contend this could have only end with a series of bitter events. All we wanted was better, but it's bullet flying left, right, and center. Grenada at the center of international affairs, things appear more bitter than they have ever been. Bitter enough for Uncle Sam to intervene. It's bombs, and bombs for so. Bombs explode as the revolution implodes. Helicopters spit in fire. Tanks and troops swarm the road. Democracy must be restored. It didn't take long for revolutionaries to surrender and throw down arms. The place calm. It over. The bitterness over. The bloodshed over. And revolutionary soldiers in lockup. Freedom of speech restored, so all man want to talk up. He's a PRA, and he's a PRA too. People turning on their own people. All we wanted was better. And that is within our right to seek our own self-interest. All we wanted was better and to mind we business. All we wanted was better to control the life we live in. All we wanted was better. But better ain't always easy. We know because we live it. You think they crushed our revolution, they crush our spirit. Because now every time we hear better, the bitter is vivid. So now we get quite comfortable with our bitter living. Yeah, things bitter. When it will get better. But things must bitter before it get better, better, better.
Thank you, John. Our next speaker will be Professor Brian Meeks. Again, all questions and comments should be placed in the chat and we will address it when we get to the interactive session. Professor Brian Meeks is a professor of Africana Studies at Brown University in the United States. Until 2015, he served as Professor of Social and Political Change and Director of the Sir Arthur Lewis Institute of Social and Economic Studies at the University of the West Indies, Mona, Jamaica. He has published many books and edited collections, including After the Post-Colonial Caribbean, Memory, Imagination, Hope, Critical Interventions in Caribbean Politics and Theory, and Caribbean Revolutions and Revolutionary Theory, an assessment of Cuba, Nicaragua, and Grenada. And his novel, Paint the Tongue Red, was published in 2003. No stranger to Grenada, Professor Meeks lived and worked in Grenada during the revolution. Please welcome Professor Brian Meeks.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you loud and clear.
Wonderful. I want to thank you at Headers Lane and the members of the committee who invited me to come here. And it's really an honor. I've never met Tessa before. Hello, Tessa. But Val is an old friend. And it's great to see that she has not aged a day since the last time I saw her. Thanks for that rousing presentation. Wow. Unfortunately, I think my own is going to be a little less rousing. I certainly take a lot from the poem that was just read and the counterpoising of better and bitter beside each other. Because I don't think we can understand the successes and real advances that were made between 1979 and 1983 without putting them alongside the crisis of 1983 and understanding that as well. I want to make a couple of comments coming from an insider, outsider, that is somebody who, like other Caribbean people, was looking at Grenada very closely, but who also was fortunate to, as was just mentioned, live within the revolution. And I don't know whether that makes me persona non grata or whether I'm an honorary Grenadian, because I'm also happen to be married to a Grenadian these many, many years. But whatever it is, I do think I occupy a peculiar position as somebody both in and out. And we can't divorce the euphoria of 1979 from the tragedy of 1983. Let's talk a little bit about the euphoria of 1979. When March 13th came, I worked at the Jamaica Broadcasting Corporation, which is the only television station in Jamaica at the time. And when we heard the first reports and the sort of crackled tapes of people speaking, I, for one, was listening very carefully because I wanted to make sure who was speaking, who was this that had taken over power and was proclaimed power. And the first voice I think I heard was that of H.A. Austin, whose voice I did not know. And so I said, I'm not sure who it is. I need to hear the voice of somebody who made it clear to me that it is the newsroom. The next voice was Morris. And I turned to the newsroom and said, the newsroom movement have taken. And of course, I knew Morris before this of the Jamaican Bernard Force. And it was impossible to imagine the way that those of us who certainly were on the left of the Jamaican political spectrum felt at that moment. We were in what has been described as a pre-Civil War moment in Jamaica, in which the two main political parties were engaged in a battle to the death almost. And from Grenada came this possibility of a different direction. The list of things that suggested a new, more popular direction are myriad and have been mentioned before. Some of them by Val and many by Tessa. I would like to first of all focus on the question of popular mobilization and the unprecedented involvement in national life of the Grenadian people. And, thank goodness and thank God for really underlining some of my points. Small things, the voluntary roadwork program and the youth, in which people took time, went into communities. Somebody cooked an oil down or similar food. And people worked on Saturdays and Sundays, nearly Sundays and fixing roads. Unprecedented, this level of volunteerism. Popular attendance at events, concert, visiting heads of personalities, etc. Unprecedented. I can't recall a day in my time in Grenada in 1981, literally, that there was not an event going. I think people attended, were involved, participated, made comments. And then the big thing, those were the small things, the big things, such as the annual budget debate. Just I mentioned it earlier on, the budget debate remains to this day an unprecedented feature in the Caribbean political life, which has not been matched. The involvement of people from schools, from the community, from the private sector, from the trade unions in helping to decide and design the budget through local parish councils, and the local parish councils in and of themselves. The involvement in defense, and this is the one that a lot of people shy away from as an indication of popularity, because of course the question of defense raises the question of militarism, etc. But when you trust your own people to defend themselves with arms, it is an unprecedented.
Professor Mix, could you hold 1 minute, please? Could I ask everyone to mute your mics at this time? Take a minute and just mute your mics. Thank you very much for your cooperation. Thank you. Thank you. Go ahead, Professor Mix. Sorry for the interruption.
Not at all. Not at all. Yeah, I think it's a very important one because the maneuvers in which thousands of people gathered on the weekend to basically practice defending their own country. Something, again, outside of revolutionary Cuba, perhaps, outside of Haiti and the war for independence, is an unprecedented moment in Caribbean history in which people actually attempted to practice what it would mean to defend themselves. This is something which requires a significant degree of thought as to what this means in terms of trust, etc. But alongside these popular initiatives, and I should actually mention one additional one, the taking of power itself, because some people about taking of power because it was led by the cadres of the NGO was coup. It was a coup. I've heard this argument repeated in the early days, but it could not have lasted a day had it not been for the active involvement of thousands of people in supporting the people who led the initiative against Gary government. So I'm just thinking that the question of popular involvement and its scale, sheer scale, is an unprecedented part of the Grenada Revolution, which needs to be remembered and thoroughly studied. Val has mentioned the educational initiatives that were taken, and I shall say no more, except to perhaps mention a program that I was involved in, which played a minor role, which was the carrying of Caribbean history and politics to the workplaces. This program of worker education was pretty straightforward. There was no comprehensive history of Grenada, and of course Grenada located within the Caribbean. And what we tried to do was to basically teach history from a progressive perspective, no doubt, but to bring history to the world. I think it was embryonic. It did not go as far as it has gone. Events overtook this particular initiative, events and crisis of 1983. But it remains, I think, a very important difficult part. In the economy, mention was made by Tessa in her talk about the initiatives in the economy. And I'm not going to elaborate, but I want to mention one factor which is not often mentioned. That is the question of the absence of corruption. Absence of corruption. The Grenadian economy grew significantly in every year of the revolution. And in a time when the Caribbean economy, indeed the world economy, was in a recessionary phase. And this was recorded by the IMF, and the IMF spoke very highly of Guinea's performance. And we knew why it grew, and it was infrastructural development, it was the airport, it was all the projects related to infrastructure beyond the airport, including the roads, etc. But the very fact that it grew at the pace and in the way it did was in part due to the fact that loans that were borrowed were spent where they were supposed to be spent. There is literally no major text that has argued that the Grenadian government was corrupt. And this may be a simple thing, but in light of governments that have cascaded across the Caribbean in the years after the revolution, I think it's a very important point. The revolution meant a new start in how leaders and political parties deal with their people or dealt with their people. And I think this is a point which underlines the fact that the economy was a huge success. Even though ultimately the question might have been asked, beyond infrastructure, what? It's a worthwhile question, but this was the moment when infrastructure was required. And this is, and new movement, the People's Revolution government rose to meet the demands of the moment. But that brings us to the tragedy and crisis of 1983. And I'm going to say that much has been written and much said on the crisis of the Central Committee, the joint leadership decision, Morris's decision to break with the decision of the Central Committee after returning from Cuba, the decision to detain him politically, public uproar, the freeing of Morris from his post, the decision to move to the fort instead of to the crowd in the market square, and the events on the fort, and the confrontation that ultimately led to his death, and to the death of people close to him, including Eunice Whiteman, Jacqueline Preston, and others. And we cannot leave the revolution in a sort of one-sided way of understanding what was done that was right, without focusing and spending significant time on what was done that could have simply was wrong. And I want to pause with deep respect for all who died on October 1980. And to pause and think about how things could have gone different and what it would have meant, not just for the people of Guinea, but for all Caribbean people, indeed all people in the African diaspora, indeed all people who are concerned with building a different kind of culture. And while it is true that there is an entire discourse that sort of loops over from the making of the 90s, of the revolution in 1979 to 1983 and the crisis, and that we need to fill in those 4.5 years, as has been done by the two speakers who preceded me, without understanding the problems in the New movement itself, without understanding the problems in how the notions of the vanguard were exercised in Grenada and the crisis that engendered, without understanding inbuilt questions of militarism, which affect all revolutionary regimes. If you think about it, when we go back to the Russian Revolution, there's 13 countries invading, fighting a civil war against white Russians, against the Bolsheviks. If you think about the Cuban Revolution and its 60-odd years of encirclement by the United States, the kinds of pressures that places on the regime just to survive. If we go back to the 19th century, early 19th century, think of the Haitian Revolution, and you think about, when you're faced with the entire world against you, what does it mean for the entrenching of authoritarian militarist tendencies just to survive, just to have freedom? There's a broader question here of what it means when a single country makes revolution, and what are the stakes at hand. And the stakes of revolution is what I want us to think about in my closing comments. To sort of put a better spin on it, I would suggest that why, despite the tragedies of the past, the idea of changing the world remains such a powerful notion, able to invoke passion and inspire millions to consider joining and changing the world. Is it an impossible dream, one not worth pursuing? Have the crises and failures of revolution in the past killed the concept of revolution? And I would suggest that, on the contrary, the notion of revolution is alive and well. And if you think about the world of the last 3 or 4 years, the world immediately before COVID and during COVID. If we think about the global upwellings of 2019 in Chile, Sudan, Lebanon, Puerto Rico, Haiti, Hong Kong, and so many more. And if you think about the Black Lives Matter movement of 2020, first in the United States, then across the African diaspora and way beyond the African diaspora, I suggest that there is a new and widespread desire for structural change of a kind which has been unprecedented in the world, and that could certainly be considered revolutionary. And a new generation of people in the Caribbean and in Grenada in particular will have to learn from the deeply human experiments that were attempted in cases like indeed Grenada 1979 to 1980, as well as to learn from the damaging and ultimately tragic pitfalls that led to October 1982. The questions really are, how do you make a better world for the vast majority of people? How do you make that world in the face of implacable resistance from the masters of the universe who now run our world even more so than before for themselves? Can you make freedom in a small corner of this world we live in the face of overwhelming military and economic might? Or does it have to come from everywhere, all at once, within and outside the beast itself? These are some of the questions we face as we contemplate the still vital notion of revolution in the first 30 years of the 21st century. Thank you.
Professor Brian Meeks, I want to say thank you very much for taking the time from your busy schedule to be with us here today and give this excellent presentation. I want to say I heard you're on the road, and that couldn't stop you from making the presentation today. We really appreciate the time. I'm not sure if Prime Minister Dickon Mitchell is going to agree with me, but I bestow upon you honorary Grenadian.
I accept it with great honor.
Thank you very much. But thanks a lot for really taking the time to share your day with us. We really appreciate it. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah. Now, before we begin the interactive session, we would like to share the following video with you and remind you about the plight of Comrade Glenn St. Louis and a GoFundMe page that will be launched soon. In the 1980s, while in Canada, Glenn worked tirelessly to support the Grenada Revolution. He returned to Grenada in 1990, was a candidate for the MBPM in St. Patrick's East constituency. John, will you now share the video with us, please? Thank you.
Without a home. 81-year-old. 5 people left without a home. 81-year-old Glenn St. Louis is one of the latest fire victims. Mr. St. Louis' home went up in flames last evening in an area called Circular Drive, St. George. The 81-year-old, who is wheelchair-bound, was the lone occupant at the time of the fire. He recounted the moments to the point where he was saved by a neighbor.
I was actually in my bedroom actually. My little granddaughter had forgotten something she came back from a babysitter, and she left the front door open, right? Realizing the door was open, I went to close the door. And on the way from closing the front door, I heard like popcorn popping. I looked in the kitchen and the direction of the fridge, I noticed at the back of it, there's still like flames rising at the back, you know? And that's how it all started. All that from a wheelchair. Yeah. I kind of mobile, right? And I pulled the plow down on the way back to the front door. The next door neighbor came over and lifted me out of the wheelchair. And I got out of the house.
The homeowner says he is not blaming anyone for what happened. However, he believes if there was water in his tap, the outcome might have been different.
It was, I thought, hey, some fire there, but let me just pour some water. Went to the pipe and there was no water in the pipe. And that has been a big problem. To be honest, I am not going to blame Nawasa for the situation, but if there was water in the pipe, for days we haven't been getting water. If there was water in the pipe, that would not have happened.
St. Louis was unable to salvage anything. The structure, which was part wall and part board. The elder man says he received a visit from parliamentary representative for the South, Andy Williams, and others who aided in his distress.
One thing I can say though, a few of the ministers came around last night, including our minister down here, Andy, and they were very good. Andy went with me to the hospital. In fact, he took me to the hospital, waited the whole time, took me back home and everything like that. Couldn't expect better from a minister of government. Then Mr. Tellisford, was it? The Monto, how was it? He was wrong here and others. So they acted as ministers should, politically. So I have no complaint where that's concerned.
Mr. St. Louis is thankful to be alive. However, his greatest loss, he says, is this.
Thing, and I'm really saddened by that, especially for my library. I was developing a nice library, I had about 400 books in that library, all type of books, religious, political, everything like that, and everything gone to ashes. And that's the saddest part about it. Then my crystals, wear like glasses and other things like that. And basically that's it. But I have life, and that's the most important.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Just let me point out the path for the rest of the program. We would now have the interactive session with questions from the chat read by Professor Martin Felix and questions from the audience. After approximately 30 minutes, then we'll remain open. Please note that at the end of this session, the platform will remain open to an unrecorded session of discussion and interaction. We would have a tribute to those who contributed to making and building the Grenada Revolution, but are no longer with us. And then we'll have the vote of thanks by Dr. Sonia Nixon. Very good. So now we'll start the interactive session. Professor Felix is going to ask, we can start with questions from the audience to the panelists, or Professor Felix is going to ask questions that were placed in the chat.
Okay, I hope I'm being heard like clearly.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Very well. So we have a lot of commendations. We have good presentation. Teacher Valerie, the teaching of the revolution are relevant today. And another one for Dr. Tessa Barry, excellent presentation. And then there is a good to see you, Mr. Bizo, that's from Lincoln Deputy. Excellent presentation as expected. And by the way, thanks for assisting first-year university students and student and family friend Carolyn Knight. She is deeply grateful. Enough respect, comrade. And then we have the first question. The first question is directed to Dr. Barry. And to Dr. Barry, it says, do you intend to influence the current government to return to some of these practices? And we're we're expecting some more questions, but we'll just deal with this for now.
So part of the, sorry about my lighting, I'll have to put it on afterwards. Thanks for the question. Part of the entire project is to submit some, you can hear me? Yeah, right. Is to submit a list of recommendations that come from the research to the government of Grenada. So hopefully we can lobby through that and also to have a discussion, a policy brief to present to them. So hopefully we can, coming out of that project, we can get some, we can influence to a certain extent, if not to a great extent. So that's the intent.
Very good. So please solicit your questions, and we'll give you an hearing.
You can also raise your hand, and we'll acknowledge you if you have any questions. So I'd like to ask Ms. Valerie Gordon if she can expand on her presentation in terms of where do you think Grenada is today, and what can be done to improve the educational system that we have today?
Thank you for the question, Paul. If I could quote from the former Minister of Education, because the new minister has not been in office that long, she made some remarks a couple months ago regarding the performance of kids in school, in the CXC and CPEA. And one of the things that you hear observed is that there's a focus in the education system on kids passing exams. And I see it from my own grandchildren, you know, there is not as much emphasis on building building the full capacity, the full potential, all of the talent of children, right? There's also seemingly not enough engagement of parents in deciding or in making recommendations for how the education system can better serve them. So to that extent, there's a lack of parents' agency in that regard. And the overall thrust is, one, towards passing exams, and two, we still have the traditional notion that education is about training people or preparing kids for the traditional roles and jobs. Lawyer, doctor, we still have not embraced, except maybe for NULO as an institution, the importance of preparing kids to realize their fullest potential, whatever that might be, and to expose them to opportunities that will allow them to build on that. So, I mean, that is my take. I'm sure other persons who are in Grenada, but I follow the education system. We don't have a national adult literacy program, for example. Why not? And yet we are complaining about the problems associated with that. So that in itself is I know there was a small program in the Ministry of Education some time ago, but do we have a national campaign or movement to address that issue? So these are some of the observations I can make it to answer that question, and how, to what extent do our people have any agency in what this education system looks like?
Very good. Thank you. Thank you very much. I wanted to also pose a question to Dr. Barry. Over the last 20 years in Grenada, it seems like we were moving away from agriculture. What impact do you think COVID had on agriculture in Grenada?
Well, COVID to a certain extent had a negative impact on aspects of agriculture. One, from the export perspective, because of the immobility, like a lot of the things produced could not have go out. So the focus was more on that of a domestic market. So a lot of it, you have farmers who sometimes would send their produce. Trinidad and Tobago, for example, we have that thriving trade between Trinidad and Grenada, and some crops were not able to get there. So that, I think that's one aspect from the negative perspective. Also, even with the restriction, there were times when farmers were unable, like if you recall at the beginning, farmers were not under the essential service sector. They were not considered essential services. So a lot of farmers were unable to go on the farm at the beginning until later on when it was realized that that's an error and that farming should be considered as an essential service. So there were considerable spoilage of some crops during that. Even the tendering of animals, etc., was an issue. So I think from a negative, when you look at the impact on the negative side, but on the positive side, I mentioned when I was speaking the idea of community-supported agriculture, and right within the communities itself, what you saw was persons purchasing from the farmers that live right next door, the farmers that live within the community. So that I considered as a positive impact.
Very good, very good. Thank you very much.
Okay, I have a few more questions. So there's one, we have this gathering here in Crown Heights at the Coal Pot Restaurant and Bar. And there's a question from one of the members of the audience. 4 decades later, he asked, have we figured out what caused the demise of the revolution? And how do we avoid these pitfalls?
I think Professor Meeks alluded to some aspect of the ending of the revolution. Professor Meeks, you want to take a shot at that? I think you're muted. Sorry.
Yeah, I think we have to be, very, very clear-eyed on the crisis itself. And, in its most broadest way, without actually saying who did what. The division in the leadership of the People's Revolution, of the New Jewel Movement, and therefore ultimately of the Grenada Revolution, led to a situation which we all know about, and which ultimately led to the fourth. The killing of Morris Bishop, opened the doors, and others opened the doors for what was being planned from long before, which was an invasion of Grenada. We could spend a lot of time discussing who did what and who should have done what. But ultimately, that is where the crisis lay. Would a crisis have come at another point in the Grenada Revolution? Quite possibly. But this is what happened. And what people here who have written about this, who have discussed this at length, and we need to continue discussing it at length. But what does it really mean? It means that if the organization, the party that is leading the process is divided, the process will more than likely fall. And I think that is the broadest way that we can look at it now. We're 45 years beyond that time. The question is not simply of not stop talking about it, but to continually think through what went wrong and how it went wrong. The questions in relation to the vanguard, which need to be put on the table. The vanguard made the revolution, made the insurrection, but was the vanguard the right tool for the 4.5 years of revolution? Was there a different way to have mobilized the people without this concentrated work at the top, leading the process? These are all questions that are on the table. I have no doubt that there will be new movements for revolutionary change, whether they occur as single state movements or as movements across the entire body of possibilities, alliances, collaborations across states. I don't know, but the lessons and the mistakes of the Grenadian Revolution are as important as the lessons in its success.
Very good. Well said. Thank you very much. Professor Felix.
Okay, so there's this question to Sister Gordon, sorry. You said you don't empower people. We don't empower people, but enable them to awaken the power within. What could be done to incite voluntarism, as Professor Meeks alluded to in his presentation in these times?
Yes, and I really stand by that, because no matter, as someone who has been involved in development work for many years, for people to take action, and from our own experience, for persons to take action or use their agency, they must have a conviction about the purpose and the benefits that action will take, that will yield. So you can educate, you can raise consciousness, you can advise, but at the end of the day, if you really think about it, until and unless that individual makes a decision to be part or to take action, it's not really their agency, it's yours, right? There seems, I've heard it reported by many of the nonprofit organizations in Grenada over the years, some of them are not even functioning anymore, that it has become very difficult to engage people or to have people volunteer because there is so much apathy. But if you ask to what extent, whereas in the revolution you had a national context, there was a national energizing, there was a national context, and people were moved in that wave, their own sense of their power engaged in that wave. You do not have that now, right? Many people are left on their own, to their own device to decide what to do. And many people have become, there's a level of apathy that has stepped into our society. It could be, some may have to do with the disappointment that they experience, with the failure, with the demise of the revolution. I don't think
I don't have a live feed, but
anthropological type study to understand what some of these factors are. So until people are energized in that way, that their consciousness is raised to cause them to move and to act, it's going to be very difficult to get voluntarism. Now, there is a level of voluntarism. We must say that it doesn't exist. For example, you see Grenadians who have returned home as seniors, retired, they tend to be more willing to volunteer. But across the nation, you don't see it as much. And then a lot of people are preoccupied with just day-to-day survival. A lot of people are preoccupied with just making ends meet, looking after their children, etc., etc. And so it's hard for them to see how they can add any other contribution to their plate.
Great. Yet another question to Sister Valerie Gordon Williams. it is well known, the person asked, that a significant amount of our population is post-revolutionary era. Can you offer some suggestions on how we can influence the mindset of this population akin to that of what the revolution espoused?
Well, first of all, any notion of the revolution as part of our history is excluded from history classes and the teaching of history. Unfortunately, it reminds me when I saw in the news that Governor DeSantis in Florida is now on a move or a campaign to remove Black history from the teaching of history in Florida in classes and so. It reminded me of that, right? And we haven't come to a place where all of our history is included and taught. So you could start with that. Beyond that, though, if there are any of organizations and even the work that GREMFO is doing is trying to address that issue, but somehow we're not getting to that generation yet. But I have to say to you, I have observed in the last year and a half, even leading up to the Grenada election, like an increasing appetite on the one hand, because people keep asking, where we don't know. We're hearing about it, we hear our parents up, but we don't know. Nobody tell us, we don't understand on the one hand, right? And on the other, in some cases, there's a fear. There's a fear of asking, of talking, because this is supposed to be like the Black thing. You don't talk about that. And it was a conscious effort, if we admit it, from 83 to keep that out of the focus of our consciousness. And so the younger generation of people have not had it. So I think organizations like GREMFO and others, one, it needs to be included in the curriculum in our schools because it's part of our history. And two, we need to make more effort to reach young persons, and they have been asking. We have to figure out how we get to teach them about it.
Very well, very well. So we have a question from the audience, and this person will ask the question now.
Are you getting the chance to talk now?
You can go right ahead. You can go right ahead, Brother Antoine.
Okay, thank you very much. And it's a rich evening for me because I mean, a lot of stuff that is discussed here, I lived through it. And also some of the concept or ideas that have been advanced is what I've been promoting in the last few years. For instance, I think one of our challenges is that while we attempted to have an outer revolution, we need to have an inner revolution now. And it ties with what Val has been talking about, taking agency for what, for how we occur, for how we influence, I mean, life and other people around us. So I would say to do that, we need to find a way how we could get some closure, some healing. There's a lot of trauma. And I'm very excited that you mentioned that the name of that author who I'm reading his stuff even at this moment. That we need to really face this squarely, that we are all wounded people at various levels, at various, I mean, you know, it's so deep that unless we really find a way to heal it, we could be problems to each other. And I think probably that is one of the causes of the downside of the revolution. Notwithstanding all the propaganda about people being greedy for power, I don't subscribe to that foolishness. Is that we, up to this point in time, have not learned how to listen. We have not learned how to accommodate different point of views. We have not learned how to deal with conflict. So there's a tendency for all of us to want everybody to be the same in terms of what we talk about and how we talk about it. And once you say something and you might consider dissident, then you disregard it. Then I know I can't stay all the evening, but I also want to say something. when I listen to a lot of the conversation that is happening in Africa, particularly in South Africa, and I see how they value the contribution of the Caribbean to the struggle of Africa. And we don't even make much mention. And so that even how we treat our Haitian brothers. I was listening to Julius Malema not too long ago, and he was talking about how South Africans are treated the Zimbabweans and others and Nigerians and so on in terms of calling them foreigners and things. And I've seen we're still doing the same thing with the Haitians. And I think we had to, and to me, that comes from a situation where we are wounded. We don't know, we self-hate, we hate ourselves because anything that we look like us or reflect, anyone that look like us or reflect like us, we are willing to distance ourselves from them. So there must be that sort of bridging the gap between ourselves and our kin, whether in the Caribbean or on the continent or in the other parts of the world. And I think I would suggest that we can learn a lot what is happening in South Africa right now, what is happening in Africa generally, because one of the things that is coming out there now is that the folks in South Africa are learning from the experience of Zimbabwe so that they don't make the same mistake again, because, I mean, although it's complicated, we could learn from what the mistakes we have made in our first try at major revolution, and then try to minimize any possibility. But we cannot avoid making mistakes. Mistakes are inevitable. The issue is how we manage it. Thank you very much for indulgence.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Martin, I think Professor Meeks wanted to comment on the, earlier. Thank you.
Very well, thanks.
Professor Meeks is on mute.
Yes, I'm here. Yeah, basically, first of all, I want to endorse Martin's comments and also his reference to Vi and the question of the internal self and its importance in any debates that we have going forward. The question of rescuing the internal self not only of the Grenadian people, but of the people of the Caribbean is critical, and I think part of this debate. But I just wanted to quickly refer to, the question of education. At this stage of the game, there are numerous texts that have been written on the Grenadian Revolution. I just mentioned some of them. There is Merle Holland's work. There is my comparative work of Cuba, Nicaragua, and Grenada. There is Patsy Lewis and Wendy Grenade's edited collections on the Grenada Revolution. There, of course, are Bernard Ford's 3 very important books detailing his own first-hand experiences of Grenada. We could go on and on. There's a library of books available on the Grenada Revolution, which can form the basis not only of university courses like ones I have held in the past around Grenada or including Grenada, but also that is the basis upon which you then write high school and primary school texts on this body of knowledge. So let us not underestimate that one of the things that is missing in this situation, just making available to the public the existent research and conversation that has taken place in the last 40 years around the Grenada Revolution. That would be a big start.
Yes, I agree. Books like from Professor Grenade on the Grenada Revolution, Reflections and Lessons, I think those are really summary and concise analysis that would be amazingly valuable in schools. I think that we should start there.
Okay, so Jennifer Jones, you have the virtual floor. Please.
Thank you, though I think Roy Oden and Olivia were before me.
Oh, I wasn't sure of the order.
Yeah, I think they were before me, so let them
go. Okay, thank you. Thanks for understanding. Okay, so the person next, I'm not sure who this is.
Yeah,
Can just lower your virtual hand and Please proceed.
Hi, thank you for the opportunity to ask this question. My question is for Valerie, Miss Valerie. You made reference to Dr. Gabor Mate in your presentation, and a lot of the work that he does is around trauma. So my question is, in your opinion, is there any evidence or anything you could identify as trauma through the different generations in Grenada following the revolution?
Oh my goodness, absolutely. Absolutely. And that's part of why his work is intriguing me. That's part of why I want to find a way to maybe invite a circle of people who are interested to start looking at some of the work that he's doing, because I find it resonated so deeply with me. And I'm sure it will resonate with a lot of people. Even his definition of trauma, how it manifests, and the simplicity of it. And you asked that question maybe because you know of his work. He speaks from his personal experience of being a baby handed over, I don't remember which country in Europe, during the how should I call it? When the Germans were creating all the camps, and so I don't remember the word to use for it, but in Auschwitz, and his parents handing him over as a 4 or 5 month baby to somebody that they didn't know, in the hope that he could be saved. And he lost his parents, and the rest is a whole series of very difficult experience. He migrated to Canada eventually. He's a physician, an MD by profession, but he has taken on this campaign to look at the issue of trauma in pretty non-traditional ways that utilizes his own experience, even the issue of explaining substance abuse. And so I think there's a lot of relevance, and I agree with Joseph Antoine that we are all, and if you think about it, we've been traumatized in our lives, as children growing up in different ways. We have intergenerational trauma because we are the descendants of slaves. So a lot of what they experience has been passed on to us. Sometimes we're traumatized by our own governments in the system, whatever. So I think he offers a window to us that we can use. It may not be the only window, but I think it's one. Given my experience coming from the revolution and the demise of the revolution, an excellent window for us to start to interpret what it is we have been through, and to hopefully come to a place where we can start to look at ourselves first and try to figure out how we can heal. And I am quite willing to facilitate some kind of conversation among us where we can look at his work. In fact, I'm considering investigating the possibility of becoming one of his trainees, because he also offers training for people who are interested in doing some of that work. So if anybody is interested in that, let me know. You can DM me in the chat, or after you can get the information from everybody. I could put my email in the chat, because I really think it's some work that we need to do.
Thank you very much, Val. I just want to say that we are approaching 2.5 hours of program, so we'll take 2 more questions, and then you can continue the conversation at the end. It would not be recorded, so you can stay on and have a discussion, but we'll take a few more questions, Mr. Felix, and then we'll have a tribute to the fallen soldiers, and then the closing vote of thanks by Dr. Nixon. Thank you.
So we have a question from the audience, and I just would like to allow this person to come in. Please proceed, Mr. Baptiste.
Good evening, good evening. March happens to be my favorite time of the year, and very happy to participate in the forum. A lot of familiar faces. Sister Val, always thank you for your contribution. And Dr. Barry, you have been in touch with over the last few months. So my question is this: given the fact that we were building what was popularly believed to be a socialist revolution, and since its collapse, I have found myself always defending the good, the many benefits that the revolution brought to the people of Grenada. But about a year ago, I was having a conversation with a friend of mine. He was actually my first president of my high school student government, the first person, somebody that we know very well. His name is Jerry Grant. And we were having this detailed conversation about the revolution in terms of what are the lingering, what did we think were the single most important benefit that the revolution left us with. And I was quick to jump to the default position of that, the airport and all these other sort of tangible projects that happened. And he listened carefully, and then he suggested that he thought that the most important thing the revolution did was to set the foundation in building what is today's the Grenadian middle class. So the question is not for any one particular person, but it's something that I want to explore a little deeper, and I would like your input. Do you think that our friend Jerry Grant is correct when he says that the single most important thing the revolution accomplished was setting the foundation for what has become the Grenadian middle class?
Nice question.
Professor Mix, go ahead. I see you raise your hand. Yeah.
Sure. You have to let me in.
Oh, I'm hearing you. You can.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
That's a very interesting point. I know if you're going to try to boil things down to their essence, you're going to make mistakes. So you don't have to say the single most important thing to make that point. You can simply say that among the critical things was this, and then absolutely right. And the point is that the whole educational push. The students who went to study in Cuba, the students who went to study in the Soviet Union, at the University of the West Indies, and who have come back, many of them, with first degrees, some with second and third degrees, has transformed Grenada. If you think about the Grenada immediately before that, when Eric Gary was paying his money to the University of the West Indies and foreign education, depending on having a relative in New York who could put you off while you went to CUNY in the night or whatever was possible, and compare that with today, where there's a whole cohort of educated Grenadians, both at home and abroad, which didn't exist before. It's a very important dimension, which is actually well put by Jared Brown. Suggests that it is up there at any rate on the list.
Thank you very much, Professor Meek.
So I want to, if I might, Martin, add a little to that.
Sure.
And I'm not by no means I want to agree with Brian about the fact that I'm not sure if there's a single most significant accomplishment of the revolution, right? Because if, for example, you look at the airport, the building of the Grenada airport and the contribution that has made to our economy and to all of our people, how does that compare? But I want to make a comment on that in the sense that objectively, that happened as well. But I see it from the point of view of lifting families out of poverty. Because education is one of the primary ways for upward mobility. And if the revolution, or not if, the revolution did enable some families because they otherwise would not have had the opportunity to have a tertiary education. And if the result of that is that they emerge into the middle class, then fine. But for me, looking at the other side is helping people emerge out of poverty.
Good. Thank you for this, Val. So we have 3 more questions really, and I'm going to allow Ms. Sorana Mitchell the virtual floor. But before I do so, I just wanted to read 2 questions, and by then we will have answered, I think, most of the questions, if not all. 1 second, let me So the next question will be, hey, Deborah. To follow up on Val's response, what do you think is responsible for the loss or lack of agency amongst parents in the participation in their children's education, and how can that be remedied? Okay, so we pause for this this is from Sister Margaret Francis, and I would just allow for another question, and then just allow you to come back in, Sister Gordon.
First and foremost, I mentioned that in the revolution, we are just coming out of colonization because we got our independence in 74, the revolution was 79. So we came from a system that was very top-down. There was no debate about what was going to be taught in schools and all that, the curriculum and things like that. We've moved away from that to a large extent because we have our own Caribbean exams and so. However, the education system still functions in a top-down way. The ministry determines what is going to be in the curriculum, et cetera, and the schools have to follow. And to the extent that teachers have sometimes tried to raise their opposition to that or question it, they sometimes get reprimanded. Sometimes parents are afraid to question this because the way the system has worked in their eyes is that you can get victimized if you raise questions like that. So it's a way of shutting people down. What needs to happen is to open that back up so that you have participation from the ground up. So some mechanisms ought to be put in place, directly cultivated by the government, to allow parents in every parish to raise their concerns, make their suggestions for what should be added to the curriculum. So that top-down approach does not allow for much participation and input. It needs to be changed.
Very well, and I know that you have done a lot of studies on that issue of the top-down problem versus the bottom-up possibilities.
Yeah.
Great. So the next question is directed to Dr. Tessa Barry. And the question is, since COVID, well, this question was already answered. So, Mr. Sorana Mitchell, you have the virtual floor. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for the opportunity. I think the question I was asking, I'm not certain if it was answered, but the question you were reading was one that I put into the chat, whereby it was I was asking Dr. Tessa Barry, what could the government do to build on so many people who have emerged since COVID, stating that they are farmers? How can they take advantage of that? With that being said, I have a few other pointers. Now, before you answer, Dr. Barry, I have been doing some research because of my interest in the unrest that basically shook our nation, going back from FEDON to Come Forward. And I must say that as well, I am a reporter, I'm a journalist. And one of the things that always stood out to me was that October 19 was always like, I think it has changed because I lived out of Grenada for a while, but there was this, the trauma was evident. because whenever they would interview people like parents of people who died and so on, they would be bawling on the TV. So it's so pointing out where Mrs. Valerie Williams pointed out, there is need for us to address trauma that runs throughout. I also, well, I was born in 1978, so I was not around for the full, to gain fully from the revolution per se. But what I can say is that I would love for us to see the merit in what we have in our country. As someone was saying earlier, March is a good month for him. March is an important month for us because March 2nd is when Federal Rebellion started. March 13, March 11 for the revolution. So I think that we need to discuss our history, both Fedon, and if we're looking at, as I was just reading Skyred by Mr. Bernard Code, and I was riveted. And I must say that if we're going to look at the revolution, we have to look at Gary, or Garyism, as some people look at it. We cannot just look at the revolution alone. We have to look why the revolution came about. And it is because of what happened during the rule of Sir Eric Matthew Gary. So there is a lot of work that needs to be done. And I am excited to be listening to this panel tonight and learning so much. And there are some of you I would love to interview because I'm working on a project, as I said. So thank you for giving me the opportunity.
And thank you for your contribution.
So to answer your question, in terms of harnessing those who came on the scene during COVID as farmers, I can say that something has already been started because the government through ICA started the Backyard Gardeners Association. And through that, because what came about is that a number of persons started doing their own gardening, their own backyard gardening. And ICA, in collaboration with the government, they brought together some of these persons. And already we see the formation of a cooperative already, and which I think is a very good initiative. So we now have the Backyard Gardeners Association. And and that's a group of small persons who started off just doing backyard gardening during the COVID period, and they've received thus far. Some of them have received training. I myself attended one of those training just to basically see what was happening and what was going on. So they're assisting them in terms of capacity building, and then you have this initiative with the Land Bank project. And hopefully some of them those who looking for access to land can basically apply through the Land Bank project. Hopefully this project would be pushed forward by the government as an opportunity to help in terms of accessing lands, and they can continue to build. But there are also a number of other opportunities moving beyond the primary production, so the agriculture entrepreneurship opportunities, etc., for youths are. You have those things coming on stream by the government. So I think the initiative has already started, Ms. Mitchell, and it's a welcome direction.
Martin, are you seeing Denot Sand?
You're muted, Martin.
No, I'm not seeing it. I'm not seeing it, but yes.
Well, his hand is brown, so I was thinking that you not see
Yeah, I wasn't able to see it, but thank you. My poor eyesight. Denot, you have the virtual floor. Thank you.
So Martin, let's take Donat, and that would be the last question because we have the tribute and the closing by Dr. Nixon.
Great. Thanks.
Thank you.
Firstly, comrades, thank you very much for giving me this opportunity, and congratulations to all who put on this event. It goes from strength to strength. I don't think I have a solution as to what Val is trying to dream of, which is for Grenadians to stand up and proceed and continue with some of the projects, if not all of the projects of the revolution. I can only give you some of my observation with another observation as to what it is that Grenadians have achieved. I visited with Constance Grenada quite a few times since the revolution. And what I have found with each year is that the revolution continues to be buried. Now, rather than taking a view that this is very negative, I take a view that this is very positive in the sense that the invading forces have seen how valuable and important the revolution was, and they are terribly frightened of it. Their success is that we haven't organized to say to the younger generation, because we're all kind of a bit older now, this is what the revolution achieved. And this is what the revolution achieved, not with the help in the planning of Cuba or the Soviet Union, but by Grenadians themselves. We did this thing by ourselves, including the planning and the development, including the decision to go ahead with the airport, whether we got assistance from Cuba or not. I think the greatest achievement of the revolution, however, is the self-confidence that it engendered in Grenadians. I left Grenada in 1960, and when I look back at my time in England towards Grenada, Grenadians were timid. They were, we had just come out of effectively 400 years of slavery in 1974, and here we are now, and we don't know what to do. I can say to you in England, when you saw Grenadians after the revolution, you saw people really confident. They could do anything. They could take something and they could do it. That confidence, I think, is still there. And if only we can find a way of getting it going, I think that's the best thing. My illustration of the burying of the Grenada Revolution is picking up a brochure from the National Insurance Scheme and finding that it made no mention of the fact that it was established by Morris and Bernard, but that it was established somewhere between 1979 and 1983. Shocking, shocking. But those are my observations. Sorry, I haven't got a solution. Thank you.
Yeah, Martin, I'm sorry, one question. Professor Dr. Grenade wrote a very important question. If you could address her question as the last question, that would be it. It's in the chat.
Sure. Okay, Dr. Grenade says, thanks for the presenters. The issues are complex and we have to continue these conversations. My concern in this era is that we learn the lessons from the 1979-83 period for the transformative process today. As we reflect, we have to, one, be mindful of pace, means the way that we proceed, I guess the speed in which we proceed. Transformation does not happen overnight. Two, remember that we can pursue a transformative path while respecting our equal humanity and not breaking the human spirit. Three, know that with the passage of time, we cannot reclaim the Grenada Revolution. The society is different. The world is different. We have to search for new pathways to our quote unquote development while drawing on some of the positive ideas from the past. Four, allow new generations to carve their own paths, make their own mistakes, and shape the future Grenada deserves. My question is, what should former revolutionaries emphasize not do today with respect to Grenada's political party system?
I'm not sure if I might. Thank you very much, Dr. Grenade, my dear friend Wendy, for your comments. Couple things. First, I think It's very important for people to learn. People who do not know their history are very likely to repeat it, the old adage, right? If you don't know where you come from, then you may go right back there and not realize it. So I think it's very important for more people to know history, including our young people, so they know, maybe learn from that what could help them move forward. Second is to say that, yes, young people are going to make their own mistakes and we have to allow them sometimes. We do it with our children. Yeah, sometimes we have to let them make the mistakes. However, I don't know that our country or economy or people's psyche can afford to not have the lessons of the previous generation inform and advise and help them to avoid mistakes that they will repeat. Our economies suffer, or people's psyche, or people's willingness to work. We see some of it. The people's reserve takes a beating. And to my mind, if there's anything from our experience, our history, that can help them avoid at least some of those mistakes. We have to let them make, some mistakes, of course, but to avoid as many as possible. Why not? Why not? And we can use that, apply that in different societies. The history of the liberation movement, or what we call it, the movement against slavery and racism, and so in the US, for example. It's not coming to me right now, the name. The history of that movement is very important to teach the new generations to take their struggle, the George Floyd, etc., movements forward, right? I don't know that we can ask any citizen, whether it's a citizen of the revolution, a person who participated in the revolution or not, what they ought not to do in terms of political party politics in Grenada. Every citizen, regardless of their history and their background, have a right to engage in the politics, right? Whether that is partisan politics or otherwise. I myself have some concerns about how partisan politics works in Grenada and the limitations of partisan politics as we see for the last 20-something years of the tribalism that has emerged. And maybe that's what we should avoid. That's what we should not do, to engage back in that tribalism. And if there's anything we could learn from it so people don't go back, or, well, I can't say go back because we're still in it, to learn to move forward out of that partisan tribalism that our country has experienced and suffered from in the last couple of years. So this is my little input to this.
Thank you very much, Val. And now, with the approval of Professor Felix, we can now move on to the tribute to our video entitled Fallen Soldiers. I want to say thank you very much to each and every one of you who had questions, and we apologize if we didn't get to your question or your comment in the chat, but thank you very much. As you know, this could take the whole night when we start talking about the Grenada Revolution. So John, we would like to thank Mr. John Calise for his help in making this event possible. So we now have the tribute to fallen soldiers.
Yeah, whoa, this is for my soldiers, real soldiers. Yeah, this is for my fallen soldiers. We miss you, I know you can't be with you. Can't find the battlefield, life is so real. This is for my fallen soldiers. We miss you, I know you can't be with you. Can't find the battlefield, life is so real, yeah. As a little youth used to hang up on the corner. Yeah, the one of my friend them we about some marijuana. Although enough of we never grew up with no father, still we have to try the best to make it cross the border. But some white show them big like Hulk Hogan. Come and chat, tell them we don't listen slogan. We prefer them before we take program. We no grow wrong, no, we no grow wrong. Fallen soldiers, we miss you. Although you gone, we with you. Gone on the battlefield. Life is so real. This is for my fallen soldiers. We miss you. Although you gone, we with you. Gone on the battlefield. Life is so real. Yeah, enough of them not like we. Them know them wrong and still I take it fight we. Kill off my friend and think me take it lightly. And the one I wanna boy me a free. Hey, when I want a more funeral, no more burial. Stop behaving like wild animals. Get more spiritual, get more biblical. I'm gonna take a wash off over the mineral. You save your soul, you save yourself. Why you rest in peace? So tell Jaja we need some help. This is for my fallen soldiers. We miss you. I know you got me with you. Gone on the battlefield. Life is so real. This is for my fallen soldiers. We miss you. I know you got me with you. Gone on the battlefield. Life is so real. Yeah. Whoa. This is for my soldiers. Real soldiers. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Whoa. This is for my soldiers. Real soldiers. Yeah, yeah. Yeah. Whoa. This is for my soldiers. Real soldiers. Yeah. This is for my fallen soldiers. We miss you. I know you got me with you. Gone on the battlefield. Life is so real. Yeah. Whoa. This is for my soldiers. Real soldiers. Yeah. This is for my fallen soldiers. We miss you. I know you got me with you. Gone on the battlefield. Life is so real. This is for my fallen soldiers. We miss you. I know you got me with you. Gone on the battlefield. Life is so real. Yeah. As a little youth used to hang up on the corner. Me and the one of my friends, them we about some marijuana. Although enough of we never grew up with no father. Still we have to try the best to make it cross the border. But some boy show them big like Hulk Hogan. Come and chat, tell them we don't listen slogan. We prefer that before we take program. We not grow wrong, no, we not grow wrong. For our fallen soldiers, we miss you. I know you got me with you. Gone on the battlefield. Life is so real. This is for my fallen soldiers. We miss you. I know you got me with you. Gone on the battlefield. Life is so real. Yeah, enough of them not like we. Them know them wrong and still I take it fight we. Kill off my friend and think me take it lightly. And the one I wanna boy me a free. Hey, when I want a more funeral, no more burial. Stop behaving like wild animals. Get more spiritual, get more biblical. I'm gonna take a wash off over the mineral. You save your soul, you save yourself. Why you rest in peace? So tell Jaja we need some help. This is for my fallen soldiers. We miss you. I know you got me with you. Gone on the battlefield. Life is so real. This is for my fallen soldiers. We miss you. I know you got me with you. Gone on the battlefield. Life is so real. Yeah. for my soldiers. Real soldiers. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Whoa, this is for my soldiers. Real soldiers. Yeah, yeah. This is for my soldiers. Real soldiers. Yeah. This is for my fallen soldiers. We miss you. I know you gone, we with you. Gone from the battlefield. Life is so real. This is for my fallen soldiers. We miss you. I know you gone, we with you. Gone from the battlefield. Life is so real, yeah. As a little youth used to hang up on the corner. Me and the one of my friends, them we about some marijuana. Although enough of we never grew up with no father. Still we have to try the best to make it cross the border. But some white show them big like Hulk Hogan. Come and chat, tell them we no listen slogan. We prefer them before we take program. We no grow around, no, we no business for our fallen soldiers. We miss you. I know you can't be with you. Gone from the battlefield. Life is so real. This is for my fallen soldiers. We miss you. I know you can't be with you. Gone from the battlefield. Life is so real. Yeah, enough of them not like we. Them know them wrong and still I take it fight we. Kill off my friend and think me take it lightly. And the world out.
Thank you very much, John. May they rest in peace. I will now have a vote of thanks by Dr. Sonia Nixon. And just a reminder, at the end of the vote of thanks, you can remain on the unrecorded section of the program and chat and ask any questions and that you wish. Okay, thank you very much.
Good evening, good morning, good afternoon, good night, everyone. Those of us here in Grenada, those far and wide in the diaspora, but all Grenadians at heart and all our friends, we are one people. My duty is to give the vote of thanks. You know, I was just looking at this long list of people who we're recognizing. This was indeed a popular revolution. Those are comments have gone. There are a lot of people who are left behind to continue the struggles. And I heard that coming out tonight from our speakers that we need to continue this. So I want to thank, it's my duty to say thank you. Thank you to everyone, but especially I want to say thank you to our moderator, Mr. Paul Clement. Thank you for taking us transitioning. Despite the technology we have to use and we don't see each other, we just have to make sure and do it right. So I guess you're coming back next year. You know it already, might as well. So thank you very much for really leading us through and keeping the theme intact and the chronology of everything. To John, of course, the technician at heart, the one who makes sure that we all are in touch wherever we are in the world. I guess this is probably the greatest gift of COVID, that we can use this technology to maintain real-time contact with each other. So thank you, John. And you know, I know I give you trouble every year, but thank you for allowing us to use your platform to be able to do this very important meeting. Martin Snow Felix, thanks. You really kept the questions flowing and kept them short and made sure that our moderator, our speakers gave answers that were concise and valid. Thank you very much. I want to thank the Grenada Revolution Memorial Foundation for every year ensuring that this happens. The Grenada Revolution will not die as long as we do this. And what Val says, recreate agency. Everybody has to recognize I'm part of this. I And of course, to the March 13 Celebrations Committee, thank you for coming on and making sure that this happens. It is important to me and to those of us who have lived through the revolution. The people who provided entertainment were, of course, came in at the right time, kept this not boring, because it actually can be very boring. So to our traditional dancers and to Aquino, poet at heart, thank you very much for participating and taking us through a very large era of our history, our cultural history, which is so important to keep intact. To our speakers, Dr. Tessa, I hadn't heard you speak before, but infectious, youthful, enthusiastic, and a lot of hope. And I have a sense of evolution coming out of this great revolution that we have. Thank you, because agriculture was one of our most important areas of work during the People's Revolutionary Government. And here it is again being called to, we're asking people to make sure that agriculture is reborn, come out of incubation, and that it does the exact same things, provide food and provide strength for economy that we can produce. You know, the thing that I say Grenada has, if you plant a bottling Grenada, it grows. That's how fertile our soil is. We have to make sure that we can continue and do what is required. We don't have a lot of land, but we have land. We don't have a lot of people, but we have people. We have fertile land and great people. We can do this. So thank you also for reminding us of the foundations that we need to work on. Community involvement in particular. I like that slogan nation. Yeah, let's talk to people. Let them remember what the thoughts are. Education, of course, financing, marketing. And of course, remembering that we have to do this together. No one person can do this, okay? So thank you, Dr. Tessa, and we hope to see a lot coming out of your part of the world and making agriculture work for our people, encouraging our children in particular to take it on, not as something that dirties their nails, but as something that fills their pockets and their belly. My sister Val Cornwell, I thank you. I thank you for using your teacher sense and your teacher to remind us that we all have to learn what this is about, that especially that it has to come from within us, that unless we are able to wake that power within us, unless we're able to see our need for agency, we're not going to go ahead. Trust me, that's something that's been taken from us as far as I'm concerned. You have to teach a man, show a man that he can fish. Don't just give him fish every day. That's what has happened. And we have to go back to helping people to understand their power, that great sense of agency. I also want to thank you for bringing up the issue of trauma. This is actually something that I plan to work on in the next, as of tomorrow. Look at trauma in Grenada. I remember my daughter at 5 writing me a letter when we lived in Havana, stating that she did not like the war. I'm like, what the hell war are you talking about? My 5-year-old child who lives close to Granans Beach should not be thinking of war. And we don't understand the trauma is left between us. A lot of the things we're not able to do is because of that. 80 years later, the Jews are still talking about Auschwitz and everything else that has happened. We need to make our people understand, okay, that trauma is something that really occurred, okay, especially among the people who were directly involved in the war of the revolution, the people who are directly involved in trying to get this country as leaders to go forward. We've had the tragedy of October, and we also need to collectively be able to transition this. So thank you, Val, for raising that point. And thank you, of course, for this course was really passionate, really impassioning. I mean, I really felt very good about it. Dr. Brian, I don't know how come you just have Grenadian welcome. Maybe people don't know that you have family with Grenadian DNA. But Brian, thank you. Usual, very easy, well constructed, very deliberate, very well thought out way of sharing your information. Thank you for that easy transition through a past or history and enlightening us of what our mistakes could have been, how to recognize them, accept them, and challenge ourselves to go forward. Because the truth is, Grenada have to go forward. We are going to have to choose how we're going forward. Thank you for that sobering reminder of the popularity of the Grenada Revolution, right? That the stakes of about the stakes of revolution. Yes, we had tragedy, but we're gonna get ahead. Okay, that we, as small as we were, able to change the world, and as Grenadians have to realize again, we can change the world. We are not going to let ourselves go back. We've seen a lot of things that we said, oh, well, in my time that didn't happen. No, it didn't happen. We, as people who have positive thoughts, are going to think of how can we mitigate those negative tendencies that are developing in our country. Above all, thank you for reminding us to live from the human experience, because we have to remember, what did I experience? How can I change it? And how can I make myself better? I found a Bible, like I don't know Bible so good. It comes from the book of Hosea that says, for lack of knowledge, a people perish. Will we? Thank you, everybody. Have a good night. Val, I need to talk to you. Thank you very much. Have a good night, everybody. And see you before March 13, because we really need to keep, before March 13 next year, we really need to keep the dialogues going. We promised ourselves last year and we never did it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Dr. Nixon. Thank you. And with that, feel free to stay on and on the unrecorded section and chat as you wish. Have a good night. And for those of you traveling, have a safe trip home.
Hi, everybody. Val, I want to talk to you first, because it's been my challenge in the last, I've been concerned about the fact that nobody has approached the whole issue of trauma. And when we see, I remember working in the Ministry of Health.
Dr. Nixon, could you hold 1 minute, please? Because we want to make sure that this is not live, since this is the post.
Oh, yeah.
John,